Top of the morning, assalamu alaikum. Top of the morning, saludo mi gente. This is the Underlock and Key Show this morning. This is the Underlock and Key Show. My name is Malik Aleem, and this section is going to be about building revolutionary consciousness against reactionary gangsterism. All right? All right, so it starts off. With a quote. All right, we find ourselves today forced into a re-examination of the whole nature of black revolutionary consciousness and its relative standing within a class society steeped in a form of racism so sensitive that it extends itself even to the slightest variation in skin tone. End quote. That's Comrade George Jackson. Now, this comrade is incarcerated that wrote this article within the Underlock and Key, and I'm reading it to y'all. All right? So for those that have been incarcerated and is familiar with the Myers International Ministry of Prisons and the Underlock and Key, this might be old. Y'all might be familiar with this. For those that have never been incarcerated, this is new to y'all. All right. Almost 50 years after the assassination of our comrades, WL, George, Qatari, etc., and the enemy has totally disseminated our party and reinforced their system to potentially negate our future revolutionary movements. Now, what do we do now, right? That's the question. Now, it says, our demand for narcotics to temporarily numb the pain of half-life in capitalist United States is helping to fuel our distraction. Half of us are trapping and the other half use it, killing our unity and revolutionary potential. Now here we are in capitalist United States torture chambers. Many of us are addicts chasing a high right now. Some of us are claiming a set, and from this identity cannot see being cool with another brother who claims a different set. Some are lifers who are wary of sacrificing themselves for the reactionaries to benefit. Some have already fallen too far by collaborating with the Ku Klux Klan CEOs. And in turn, they work covertly to undermine our movement. Others are poltroons, and out of their fear, they knowingly sabotage our progression as a United States disfavored minority. Now, many of us are armchair revolutionaries in that our practice never matches our stated militant goals. Others see control of the underground economy as being revolutionary. I do not have the answers. I am simply a new African man seeking community input as I continue to strive firmly. So my questions are the following. He poses 3 questions. The first question that he poses is this. 1. How is the revolutionary consciousness developed in a time of reactionary gangsterism? Number 2, at what point does this so-called revolutionary theorist have to put his theories or have to put her theories into practice? Number 3, how can we ever trust a cat who has ever worked as an informant or a jailhouse rat? By his or her very obvious individualism, he has demonstrated his priority is ideal of me first syndrome, which to us says that once the pressure of isolation, which put that person by themselves, and they get abused by the authorities, additional time is being thrown at them, etc., comes into play, he or she would tell again, setting us back even further. Now, this is the response. The Myers International Ministry of Prisons responds back as this. This comrade and their questions posed was one of the inspirations for the topic of this issue of the Underlock and Key. Now, we hope we have at least begun to provide some answers and guidance for those of us struggling with these questions. Now, this comrade also mentions a serious side effect of the current gangster era, which is propped up by the drug economy, the trap life. This reality serves as a material incentive in the form of profits for the seller in the form of chemical triggers in the brain of the buyer. We address this situation in more depth in Under Lock Keith 59 issue, where we recognize the challenges in even questioning the drug economy in today's prison environment. It will require progress on other fronts to make a dent on the struggle against the poisoning of oppressed communities. So what is to be done today, right? That's the question. Build a revolutionary culture on the streets. Now, the USW 30 states this. Recently, I heard of my older brother, comrade, passing, and it has me wondering, how do the brothers and sisters who've embraced revolutionary consciousness inside the penitentiary transition to outside society struggles? Taking into consideration that the lumping, aka gangs, are in a state of defeatism and quite fratricidal, sex tripping, going against each other. I personally exited Federal Bureau of Prisons after 17 calendars, meaning he just did 17 years. I've jumped right into local progressive politics and organizational volunteer work, serving the lumping, serving the street organizations. Yet, seemingly at every outing, one was forced to repel some form of gang reactionary threat, most of which stern chastisement suffice. However, all bullshit aside, I guess what I'm saying is, without a progressive culture in play within the hood, we are at risk of being victimized by our misguided lumping, misguided gangsters, misguided gang members, conditioned by capitalism and also conditioned to fratricidal violence, aka sex tripping, killing each other. United we stand, divided we fall. And B, we ourselves react to reactionary threat. You know, someone threatening you, you're gonna react back. You know, I still go through that myself. Like, you know, I gotta tell myself, I can't react the same way. And in turn, reinforce the lumping prison revolutionaries that return to gangster conduct once out. Yeah, that can happen. It happens. In truth, the only communities I saw which had requisite support system, minimum threat of intranational violence, and universal code of community morality were Islamic. True indeed. That because for Nation of Islam, you know, when you register in the inside, you also register in the outside. I continually read pieces in Under Lock Key where cats profess to be materialist dialecticians, and as such against spirituality. What I suggest to those living in new African areas in particular is to analyze the impact of Islam on it. Contrast that with that of the so-called revolutionaries. We must figure out more effective ways to bring unity. As we methodically strive to bring Babylon down, rather than spit unproductive rhetoric which serves interests of the pigs by dividing militants from one another. Those who are truly analyzing the body of facts, which is United States history, will have to acknowledge that those of African ancestry have always held spiritual connections and or beliefs in a higher power. Always, when it comes to the African. Anything other than that, we already know we learned it from the settlers. And or beliefs in a higher power creator. Upwards of 40% of enslaved Africans were Muslims. That's facts. It was the Muslims that was the revolutionaries. Facts. Leading many slave captors to recommend traffickers first break them torture Islam out of them. You know what I mean? Prior to bringing them down, no, prior to bringing these known rebels to the United States and England. So, that was like the Willie Lynch syndrome. They had to go to stop in a certain island because they knew that most of the Muslim slaves was fighting back, was rebellion. So that's why they had to, do a process of getting Islam out of the black man, so to speak. That's why you hear people say that Islam is the black man's natural religion. Islam is the Latino man's natural religion. Not in the form of controlling people and oppressing people, but in the form of liberation theology and true freedom, justice, and equality. And the truth of that will be Andalusia, which is Islamic Spain, which all religions was able to live in peace under the black Muslims, Moors, from the years 1711 to 1492. And you see what happened in 1492. Once Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand got together for the Catholic Church, transatlantic slavery happened, and colonization happened. Imperialism. All right, let me get back to this. It says, those who are truly analyzed, all right, I already said that. Prior to bringing, all right. My point being, those who truly work to build revolutionary culture must work with Muslims and in turn find common ground to then again gain traction in revolutionary culture building. All right. Materialists must dialectically look at United States history and correspond tactics of today's realities confronting historically oppressed peoples. Teach Christians examples of Nat Turner. Because, Nat Turner was Christian and Demont Vesey was Christians. Teach them about these Christian slaves that fought back, that was revolutionaries. And when it comes to the Muslims, teach the Muslims about Malik Shabazz, who was a revolutionary. Teach them give them the revolutionary history. Don't give them the pacifist history of those being service and docile and all that. That even though we may come from varying social cultural backgrounds, we have the very same oppressors and systems. You know what I mean? We have Muslims, Christians, Buddhists, atheists, communists, etc., who live within United States borders, all share the same injustices, inequalities, and pig brutalities on a daily basis. As such, we must cast aside the divisive rhetoric and build class unity or die. As a Muslim of New Africa, I am obligated to fight all oppressors. Yeah, the Quran tells you that. Personally, and even the Bible tells you that, pick up your cross. Personally, I could care less if the Askari or Aki at my side believes or not. Long as he or she is committed to struggle, to death, committed to death row, does it matter if I must make salat before we run towards our oppressors? You know what I mean? That's what he's asking, like, yo. You know what I mean? When it comes to spirituality, religion, that's your personal thing. Like, when it comes to the struggle, fighting for the liberation of people, what matters at that moment is, are you willing to fight for your people? Are you willing to die for your people? You know what I'm saying? Are you willing to sacrifice for your people? You know what I mean? And that's a sacrifice, because sometimes, history shows that a lot of people that sacrifice their blood and their freedom, like the Black Panthers of the old and the Brown Berets of the old and the Young Lords of the old, the Macheteros of the old, the Revolutionary Land Kings of the old, you know what I mean? And then of the new, either not living that lifestyle or not even supporting them, not visiting them, not trying to get them released, not doing no legal campaigns, you know what I mean? Unless you're a national figure. All right. Boom. Let's get back into this. It says, does it matter if, well, that's my take, and regardless, I will continue fighting. He said that's his take, and he will continue fighting, organizing, and striving. Peace. Now, this is the response back. Myra's International Ministry responds back. We agree with this author's point of view. We should be working with the left wing of the Muslim movement. You know what I mean? Now, we ain't talking about fundamentalists. We ain't talking about that extreme shit. You know what I mean? We're talking about left wing. Muslims that's willing to fight. Muslims that believe in liberation theology. That's what we're talking about. You know what I mean? We ain't talking about a brother that's going to catch a titty attack because your pants is not above your ankle. We're not gonna talk about, the ones who gonna catch a city check because you're wearing shorts or something like that. Like, about garments and all that. Like things that's, you know what I mean? It counts, but very minute to the bigger scale of things. Because you could have the best garments and you could be morally corrupt like a motherfucker. You know what I mean? You could be the haram police and be the number one person for domestic abuse, abusing your wife or whatever the case may be, or abusing your kids. So much of being a haram police. You know what I mean? So, all right, Myra's International Ministry responds back. We agree, all right, we address this question in depth and under lock key for the 48 issue. As communists, we embrace materialism and encourage scientific thinking about the world. But this does not prevent us from uniting with all who can be rallied against imperialism. All right? And the rabid anti-Muslim sentiments coming from the American imperialists creates fertile breeding ground for anti-imperialism. Although we cannot find evidence of such a high percentage of Muslims among enslaved Africans, at the time that slaves were captured from Africa, indigenous religions were the most common practice. But traffickers and slave owners attempted to break slaves of all their practices and that tied them to their homeland, regardless of what religion or other cultural norms. Now, while we often talk about the imprisoned lumpen, which means prison organizations, prison street organizations, also known as gangs, as being one of the most revolutionary populations in the United States, it is also in a backward state of affairs. Meanwhile, the last time we saw a strong revolutionary consciousness penetrate the prison population was when there were strong vanguard organizations and the oppressed nations on the streets. We must recognize that part of building a strong revolutionary movement in prisons is building an even stronger. All right. United struggle from within serves as a conduit for connecting the two via prisoners who are released. Myra's International Ministry of Prisons Release on Life program provides support to those who are struggling with these challenges after release. And we have a lot of work to do to build strong revolutionary communities for comrades around the United States. Revolutionary theorists or revolutionaries, that's USW 30. Within the context of criticism and self-criticism, I am wondering when we, as revolutionary theorists, on the inside, when you say on the inside, it's on my prisons, shall righteously analyze the definition of revolution and revolutionary, and in turn be honest with ourselves within the new African community about if we are truly on the path that Cole J, rest in peace, WL, rest in peace, George Jackson, rest in peace, etc. I am questioning myself as well, as the Kentucky comrade pointed out on page 8 of Under Lock Key 65. Many of us claim to be revolutionaries, but have yet to truly embrace the reality of revolution or shed the ethos of gangsters. You know what I mean? To be revolutionary, you gotta shed that gangster mentality off. We create plethora of revolutionary documents and prisons only to return to society and criminality. Recently, a young new African referred to a fellow rat as homeless dope fiend. This made me think back. The economy of capitalism murders millions daily. We have seemingly been co-opted by enemy cultural tenets. We have comrades embracing drug dealing as acceptable conduct, poisoning our communities, profiting off the destruction of our underclass citizenship, then returning to prison, in turn advocating for addicts to be cast aside. Like, damn, yo, that person is using cast to the side, but yeah, you're the one that got that person on that shit. We have rads claiming revolutionary authenticity that have yet to stand against the real enemy, yet take pride in shopping blood of their own. The contradictions are glaring, and I believe these are just a few of the things which have a real progressive and revolutionary movement stagnating. Perhaps a retracing of steps is needed, as in acknowledgement of enemies' defeat of the revolutionary movement in the 60s, that the black power of the 70s was a reformist attempt to somehow safeguard some aspects of social cultural pride while rejecting the dominant American capitalist culture, which in turn led to the 80s crack epidemic and subsequent abandonment of all things revolution for a piece of the pie. These cats coming into prisons today are fratricidal, I mean, they ain't into sex tripping. They are apolitical. They're addicted. Are the effects of our failures as leaders in our communities. How can he claim when our day-to-day conduct is a reactionary affirmation, meaning we go by reacting, how we respond back to things? That's called reactionary. These youth see the hypocrisies, and this is why we cannot gain their support. To speak about revolution and yet not live a revolutionary example is unacceptable and fraudulent in the first degree. I am no longer going to refer to myself as a revolutionary until I engage in revolution. Now, the first revolution is the revolution of the mind. Now, will I reference the fallen comrades as my comrade until I follow his example? I thank the Kentucky comrade for their critiques in the last two paragraphs, and they struck home for me. We must reform the gangster mentality within our movement, or destroy them, get rid of that gangster mentality, as their overt materialistic individualism will destroy us, or turn the progressive back into elements of reaction. Now, the Myris International Ministry of Prisons responds back. There is a bit of an existential crisis for the revolutionary and non-revolutionary times. We don't take on the term revolutionary as if we were superheroes, but merely to describe our political goals and ideology, or some people use the terminology community organizers. And we say that revolutionary must always be putting their theories into practice. And that includes not raising revolutionary war in a non-revolutionary situation. That is a basic principle of the guerrilla. Now, the youth can detect the phony revolutionaries who just talk the rhetoric while acting out the negative aspects of the gangster role, which means you talk revolutionary, but you act gangster. We can act as revolutionaries, as individuals, in our day-to-day behavior in interacting with, serving, and standing up for the people. There's reasons we get letters regularly mentioning the comrades who died in the struggle 50 years ago. Their legacy lives on because they stood up as examples. And even in our names don't become legendary, we will inspire the youth and the masses around us become our correct actions. You know what I mean? All right, what else? Now, another comrade interjects, don't defeat the gangster mentality. Embrace the gangster mentality. That's his take on it. He says, gangster mentality can mean different things to many different people. A gang is a group of people with a common goal, according to him. Because according to the Black Law Dictionary, a gang is a group of people that came together for criminal purposes. You know what I mean? I must emphasize that all words and concepts are subject to connotations that don't necessarily have good intentions. Gang or gangster, therefore, carry a negative and sometimes positive connotations, like other words like socialism, anarchism, communism, etc. It has been the Myris International Ministry of Prisons' aim to educate us about these ideas through the proper usage of science. Now, with this in mind, I consider myself a gangster, since I believe in the idea of working with others towards a common goal. To me, it is not about defeating this gangster mentality. It is about embracing and redirecting the gangster mentality towards the shining path. We have a common enemy, and resolving our minor contradictions doesn't necessarily mean that we have to defeat our gangster mentality. This kind of language is what causes rejection from the lumping organizations. Most people gonna be like, listen, man, I ain't got time for that shit. You know what I mean? I'm gangster, you know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? I want to bang, so therefore give them something to bang for. Give them something that's meaningful, not for some dumb shit, some petty shit. That, you know what I mean? You risk your freedom, risk your family, you know what I mean? And then you're away from your family, and it's not for the cause. Like, this is a language that is used by state finance organizations and Christians, so-called Christian groups. I understand that Myra's international ministry distribution is different, but those who pick up the under lock and key and glance at it may see this language and will put under lock and key down. Under lock and key is radical. Under lock and key is revolutionary. Most of the people, everybody that writes in the under lock and key are either incarcerated or formerly incarcerated, but nevertheless are very educated. And they have their history of being prison community organizers and prison revolutionaries. All right. And USW 11 wrote about how the state of Washington is doing whatever it can to depoliticize prisoners. And how among those places where you find the gangster mentality is where you find the most resistance against the state. When the lumping organizations understand the power they have working collectively, things begin to change and form. After all, gangs are in contrast with the individualistic mentality in the United States and are a response to the social economic conditions we face in and out of prison. It's a way to survive in a place where the capitalist and oppressive systems emphasize individualism. All right, give me a second. Gotta give me some more coffee. And just give me one moment.
You want some? Oh, you do.
All right, let me see. Gangster actions don't match words. Right? This is the first article I have written for Under Lock Key. There's another comrade. I was especially interested in writing about the topic above because all too often I have witnessed how the gangster type are eager to dictate to others how their mission is to bring unity, yet their actions and attitudes are completely misplaced. For instance, if we are to fight oppression within the prison system, how is extorting other prisoners, assaulting other prisoners, etc., a means to the end? I am not, nor will I ever become, gang affiliated. This is the comrade that's speaking right now. In my opinion, if a person joins a gang, it is because they are too weak to stand up for themselves. Prison has become a daycare. Whites sell out whites, blacks team up with whites, and babies have babies. What the hell? I've met pedophiles who are ranking gang officials, and snitches are free to roam as they please. Nothing makes any sense anymore. And just for the record, any gang which encourages a prisoner to extend his sentence or which demands that parents of children perform acts which result in them not being able to see them, that crap is known better than the lowest of the lowly. They're talking about, when you locked up, and just because you want to get your house, you want to make money where you locked up, and you put your baby moms or you put your loved ones at risk by telling them to bring drugs, and next if they get caught, ACS 60 kids, the moms gets locked up, you locked up, they're talking about that type of shit. The things gangs in Missouri do and continue to do are stupid. All right? And their actions bring upon us all the oppression. Gang members in Missouri, though they continuously spout the bullshit about solidarity, unity, and integrity, are in turn the cause and continued justification for our being oppressed. Instead of fighting for our right to not be abused by the system, Missouri gangs are the tinder with which the fire under oppression is fueled. For every instance of stupidity by Missouri gang members, we as a whole lose an integral part of the overall voice with which we need to be able to defend ourselves from the wrongs of the system. Now the Myra's International Ministry responds back. This author asserts that if a person joins a gang, it is because they are too weak to stand up for themselves. We ask in return, why is it wrong to seek others to help you defend yourself? Lumpen organizations arose on the streets and in prisons in response to very real threats to the safety of oppressed nation people. It is not realistic to think that in the face of institutional violence and attack or organized violence from other groups of people, one should stand alone. You know what I mean? And seeking this help and unity is not a sign of weakness. However, we do agree with this writer that organizations that require their members to engage in anti-people activity and anti-social activity or engage in actions that harm the general prisoner population or harm the general population in society are not friends of the fight against the criminal injustice system. There are many different types of lumpen organizations, and conditions vary in different areas. In some situations, staying away from lumpen organizations might be the best practice for anti-imperialists. But at this stage, to organize the lumpen masses, we need to be building unity between lumpen organizations where possible, not perpetrating the fighting that the prison administrations encourages. We regularly print articles in Under Lock Key from comrades in lumpen organizations doing just this sort of building behind bars. This is the leadership we need to highlight and learn from, as most of our readers in prison are in or have been in lumpen organizations. All right? Now, what else? All right, so let me see if I see another article that I should pull out. Let me see. It says, all right. All right. Now, this is the last portion I'm going to touch on. It's 7:19. I have to go to work soon, which is from home. All right. Notes on advancing the struggle inside, defeating the gangster mentality. This is another comrade. Carmen, can you re-roll this? Carmen. Peace. For those of you tuning in, salute, assalamu alaikum, salute, assalamu alaikum. Revolutionary love, peace. All right. So this is the last part of the Under Lock and Key show. Notes on advancing the struggle inside. Defeating the gangster mentality. All right, this is defeating the gangster mentality. What is a gangster? Simply a word. An idea. No gangster is a psychology, a mentality. 6 things in varying degrees, regardless of locale, are always present in penal institutions. Authorities, the badge. Prisoners, captives. Oppression, resistance, manipulation, and violence. Oppression and manipulation are the badge's primary tools for controlling prisons. Captives have recourse to resistance and violence. The gangster is both target and aspiration for the badge and captives alike. if only for different reasons. The badge sees gangsterism as a necessary evil. The convict code is based on gangsterism. The badge used this to great effect. For example, misinformation offered by a friendly badge. There is no doubt a badge can call any captive a snitch, or worse, and be believed. Many reasons. That's why you're a dumbass if you just because a cop tells you something or a CO tells you something, you don't see paperwork. You're a dumbass if you run with that shit. All right. There is no doubt a badge can call any captive a snitch, or worse, and be believed. Many reasons that the badge does have access to every captive's file. What possible purpose could they have in lying to a gangster, right? The badge's main concern is control. Controlling prisoner population is most effective when the system can take advantage of pre-existing mechanisms, such as gangsterism or convict code. In such cases, oppression seems organic. Correct course of action instead of manipulation. More often than not, a gangster learns information, suspicious emerges, questions asked, investigations follow. At the very least, a captive's credibility is destroyed. Same thing in society. At the extreme are ostracization and violence. This is not only true for the badge, because captives also manipulate gangsterisms. They just throw out lies out there. A gangster word has merit, more so than the badge. Here too, manipulation appears organic. As so you always gotta say, let me see the paperwork, let me see the receipt. Can't just go for word, can't just go for hearsay. A gangster's suspicions sway other captives' opinions so that character assassination due to personal enmity is all too familiar. The issue is not the manipulation, but rather the lack of resistance. Gangster is the pillar of lumpen communities. Gangster is the pillar of gang communities. Their honor, integrity are above reproach. Knowing this, the badge whispers in the right ears and later watches captives eat one another. Same thing in society, like sharks in a small pond. At present, the rules of gangsterism are at the service of the badge. Changing the prevailing culture of captive versus captive violence and badge collaboration is a serious problem to be resolved in prison today. Does this mean abandoning gangsterism? Gangsterism is tied up in all kinds of capitalist principles. Machoism, classism, patriarchy, etc. Yet it is based in resisting the system. Noble seed of revolution, understanding the forces at play is necessary. For combat to corrupt the gangsterism, because gangsterism can be a stepping stone to revolutionary mentality. Every social environment evinces a suggestion manipulation cycle. Subjection to rules, norms, expectations, and manipulation through rewards and negative consequences. Prisons are no different neither. It's criminal intercourse. Capitalism for general society. Gangsterisms for captives. To bring gangsterisms back to its revolutionary core, we can turn to the democratic method. Unity, criticism, unity. Gangsterism is at the badge's service not only because of manipulation disseminated through gangsters, but by lumpen divisions. In prison, far more than in society, lumpen become isolationists and separatists. Latinos with Latinos, further segregated by northern and southern affiliations or otherwise. Identical process follow for all other lumpen organizations. These divisions create barriers to communications, distrust, and steady tensions. The badge plays on the security threat groups. A Homeland Security terrorist categorization term. Also found in FBI documents referring to Brown Berets and Black Panther Party members or supporters. Affiliations and nation prejudice as much as they do gangsterism, and with the same end in view, greater control. Unity is the only real response. The badge is unified against us captives in their efforts. We, on the other hand, are barely unified against each other. First and foremost, gangsterism should be centered on opposition and resistance to the badge. Captive versus the badge, not captive versus captive. Gangsters must be extra critical with all information received from the badge. 9 out of 10 times the badge doesn't tell you anything for your benefit. Same thing in society. Information disseminated in the service of penological interests. Consider how many times the badge has warned you about a major shakedown or offered to hold you contraband. They are always engaged in exercising more control, beginning from a united oppositional front, captive versus badges, like in society, against police. It becomes possible to derail the subjection and manipulation cycle. Criticism is the second stage in the process. One must analyze their motive, endgame, and method of manipulation. From unity in opposition and criticism of intelligence being gifted, us return to unity in response. This last stage of the democratic method is determined on a case-by-case basis. Every prison is distinct in character. Gangsterism is not corrupted everywhere in the exact same degree. In some facilities, badge collaboration is excessive. In others, captive versus captive violence is the commanding concern. In progressing the struggle, captives must be able to unite against the badge. This means moving beyond nation prejudices and SCG allegiances. This constitutes the hardest step in our struggle. All right? With that said, have a blessed day. Enjoy your day. Replay this, analyze it. Y'all could go to my YouTube page if you want to see this again. Okay? Peace. Carman salute. Revolutionary salute. Assalamu alaikum. One Lord equals one people. Stay noble. This is the Unlock Key Show, produced by the Myris International Ministry of Prisons, presented by the Noble Young Lords Party. Pa'lante, siempre pa'lante. Power to the people.